And so we continued our conversation by asking ourselves, can integrity be thrust upon one? Can it be just a set of rules? Or is it something that we develop innately and nurture on our own? I am drawn to that whole idea written by Isaiah Berlin, who's quoting Kant, and he talks about how out of the crooked timber of humanity no straight thing was ever made. And interestingly, Parker Palmer talks about how by choosing integrity I become more whole. But wholeness does not mean perfection. And so I think it's important to maybe differentiate between an interpretation of integrity as rules and regulations that are leading to perfection and maybe as something else. For me, I don't see integrity as a gauge that we use to show how good we are at our teaching or indeed at our research. And I don't think integrity is something that can be forced upon someone. And I don't think it can be an academic expectation or something that can be inculcated. Instead, I see it more as a filter through which I enact my values in a way that enhances my own life and the lives of others. I think acting with integrity means acknowledging and choosing to live ethically according to my values. I see it as a filter that helps me to make right decisions and choices in my actions. I think integrity is something that helps me to distill my values as I live them out in my everyday practice in a way that is life-enhancing for myself and for others. And so for those of you who are involved in living theory and self-study action research, you will all, recognize that I'm looking at integrity as now as a part of action research and as living theory. There's that sense of translation of how we live our values in our practice, how we hold what we hold important for ourselves in our identity, and how we enact that outside in the real world with other people. And sometimes we're not so true to that identity. Sometimes we're very true to our identity, but sometimes we're not so true to our values. And Jack Whitehead uses the term experiencing oneself as a living contradiction to explain that situation when we don't live to our values as closely as we might do. And this is important for us as action researchers and living theorists. When we acknowledge maybe that we're not perfect, and that space of experiencing oneself as a living contradiction can in fact be a launch pad for doing an action research project. As action researchers, we make claims to knowledge, and we tell the story of our learning in the process of the project. But we are always in process, and let's see how this works now. So as we begin in our research process, one of the first things we do as action researchers and living theorists is we think about our practice. We think about our identities, and we think about the values we hold. And we dig deep, and we use our integrity to question our assumptions. We read to clarify our thinking, and we question our values and our practice. And our integrity calls upon us and invites us to ask questions with raw honesty, and we think critically, and we seek out instances of power imbalance and hegemony, and we problematize, and we ask ourselves really tough questions like, am I enacting my values in my practice, in every aspect of my practice? And one of the questions we asked ourselves in our conversation in Mary Immaculate College was, integrity of thought. Can we control the integrity of our thinking, or can we be lazy when it comes to our thinking? I suppose the second stage of our research nearly goes hand in hand with the first stage, and the second stage is entering into dialogue with others. And I suppose as action research and living theorists, we show our integrity by choosing critical friends with whom we can have honest and I suppose forthright conversations. We share our kind of half-baked ideas, the ideas we were just thinking about, our newly formed ideas, and we run them by our critical friends. And we choose our critical friends with integrity as well, because these are people who will not just support us and encourage us as we do our research, but they are also people who will question us and who will not let us away with any light thinking or any unformed proper questions. Integrity has a huge part to do with how we plan our research, how we gather data, and how we generate evidence. I think every researcher has to have a certain amount of integrity when they adhere to the rules and regulations and guidelines of their college or university around their research. And I think they also have to show integrity when they engage with the ethical commitments and rules and regulations around ethics of the university as well. And as action researchers and living theorists, we have to abide by those rules and regulations and show our own integrity there as well. But I suppose we have an extra layer of rules and regulations that we draw upon ourselves. So we establish living standards of judgment by which we show how we draw up criteria by which we evaluate the quality of our claim, and we show how well we're fulfilling the criteria we have established for ourselves. We show how well we're living and practicing in the direction of our values or not, and we share these ideas with others, and we develop new understandings of our work and new insights. I suppose the validity of our research is very much entwined as well with the integrity we hold. This time last year, in September 2017, Katrina McDonough gave a really excellent input at our NEARIMeet around validity, and you can see it here at our NEARI webpage. But for us, I suppose the most important thing we need to say about validity is that we show the validity of our work by establishing validation groups. Okay, so we share our, I suppose, our claim to knowledge and our thinking and our theory that we've drawn from our practice. We share them with our validation group. And these are people who are perhaps our tutors and our tutors' colleagues, maybe the principals in our schools, and they may not even agree with how you are thinking, and so they will question you very toughly around your thinking and around the ideas you're generating. And so that is where we show the integrity of our work when it comes to validation. When it comes to looking at the significance of our research as action researchers, and how we show integrity, Jack Whitehead talks about how he sees engaging in living educational theory as a contribution to the flourishing of humanity. And he sees as a distinguishing feature of living theory is that the researcher publicly shares an explanation of their educational influence in their own learning and the learning of others, and perhaps potentially on policy. And at our NEARImeet in September, we had 4 amazing inputs from people who had engaged in action research or who were still involved in their living theory projects, and they were sharing their educational influence on their own learning and its potential on the learning of others. And I think everybody was well impressed, and it shows huge integrity that people can stand there and show their newly fledged ideas, or indeed their well thought out ideas, and as they establish their claim to knowledge, and they share it openly in an open forum with everybody else. So these are the references I've used throughout this presentation and that I used on the day of the actual presentation in Mary Immaculate College. And so we concluded with a conversation around the question, how do we know that the values we hold and that we try to enact in our practice are actually life enhancing and for the flourishing of humanity?